Hey, Sean, first of all, thanks for giving us the idea to record it.
Of course, happy to.
Did we, Mike, did we actually think about it before Sean said, or like Sean mentioned it and then we started thinking about, oh, we should probably get people on the show?
Oh, it was probably about the same
The
time.
same
So
time.
we were running out of ideas, and Sean was like, "Hey, I'll help," and then we were like, "Great idea."
That works. Yeah, no, glad to connect. Definitely have enjoyed, getting to know you guys over the last year or so in this role that I got into via Ben Collinsworth, as y'all know. So
All right, sweet. Sean, let's back up a bit and have you introduce to everyone who's watching. What do you do at Yellowstone?
sure. So basically anything dealing with procurement from vehicles all the way down to handheld equipment, that's me. Getting the POs and anything needed to process it, and then making sure logistically it arrives from, at the vendor and arrives at the branch in a timely manner. And then, it's a very broad, job description from there. It kind of branches out to we're implementing a cab cams and GPS system and doing the rollout of that currently. And then robotics is always fun, I'm sure you know, and we really enjoy all the trials that we have going on, and some of them that we've actually bought and have them in the field currently, and we're looking forward to making that a reality and having more battery powered equipment as well. So we're doing trials on both robotics and batteries. So it's never the same each day. It's definitely you wake up, you don't know what's going to happen as far as needs and requests, and you just try to keep up because it's kind of a fast paced race.
I think that's kind of a cornerstone of positions like yours or just tech positions within landscaping companies is there's a lot outside of the real job description that you do. And we see that with every tech type position within the industry because people don't know where to dump things. So it kind of lands in your lap. How did you come into this role? What is your background that prepared you for the piling on that you're now facing?
Yeah, so they took a chance on me for sure. I started out in the industry 5 years ago as an irrigator for 6 months, and then after I did that, they said, "Well, you have enough of a work ethic and showing up every day and digging holes that we're going to make you an account manager." And then I worked my way up from account manager to senior account manager, as much as that's worth the small title. About 3 years after being an account manager, became senior account manager, and then a year in that role. And then 9 months ago, they called and said, "Hey, we think you'd be a good fit. Would you like to try it?" And I said, "Absolutely." I didn't know, what the job entailed day to day, and there was no SOP when I got started, but we definitely established that and have a very um, good idea of what needs to be done on a day to day basis. Whereas earlier we were kind of jumping around and trying to make decisions on the fly, and we're getting more systems in place on our side, which, as Yellowstone grows, everyone's very professional, but we're trying to keep up with new systems that we're putting in place as far as software and also just protocols. So it's gone really well since I started.
What did they see in you? Like there would be other account managers and senior account managers. Like what was special about you, Sean? Like
Oh, well, I
what's
don't
up,
know.
man?
That's a good question. I still don't know the answer to that, and that might take a while to answer. But I do believe that they put me through an MBA program, and I graduated May of 2022, and they wanted me to do something different that I was uncomfortable with and to grow. So, they said, "You ask enough questions that are based on why do we do this? What are we doing? That you would probably figure this role out." And so far that's true. And our CFO and our CEO, they definitely have open lines of communication with me and work through, any processes, like I was saying, and, improvements. And as we grow and we acquire more companies, that's just a reality of, the burden growing. So who knows? I'm a one-man band when it comes to what I do. I have a financial analyst that works with me, but we're hoping to add to the team and grow it. And as we continue to grow with acquisitions. So hopefully there'll be more folks like me that they find and hire. And, it turns out that they're capable of being more than just an account manager, which is a job in itself that's very underappreciated, I think, in our industry.
Oh yeah. Well, the companies that appreciate their job are the ones who are having a shortage of account managers. They are the only, or probably they have a shortage because they underappreciated the account managers. I don't know. Like it can be chicken and egg.
It's amazing the workload they have and what they have to balance amongst clients and keeping logs and tracking. It's not a small task.
Yeah. So, you mentioned, like you ask a lot of questions. And I would assume that would have involved you learning a lot of things on the fly, on the job, like because this role it did not exist before, right? And you're sort of giving shape to it. And you came in from being an account manager to being a fleet and equipment manager. So as this day-to-day stuff piles on you, right? How do you like make space for learning versus like just this day-to-day that happens to you? And I would like to dig into the day-to-day too, but like just the learning part, I'm still curious, like how do you balance the two?
Yeah, I would say, as this role started, it was definitely drinking from a fire hose and still is, but it's the discipline of doing what you don't want to do and learning new things, whereas you're just trying to get through the minimum of the day. Making sure that you carve out time. I like to carve out an hour for self improvement on weekdays, and then just listen to stuff on the weekends, mowing the lawn or going out doing errands or something like that. So you can find time. There's always enough time in the day if you plan. So,
Yeah.
do something for yourself and grow, because if you're not, taking care of yourself and making sure that you're growing, you're not gonna be worth anything for anyone else, to try to, help them out and, make sure that you have a healthy work-life balance in a sense of, we work really hard long hours at Yellowstone, as it is, but, just having the ability to, on the weekends to shut it down and reboot more than anything. So, still get a few emails on the weekends, but definitely everyone kinda, it's calmer for sure.
So that's another thing that we hear a lot in these types of roles where you have a lot of autonomy and it takes a lot of personal effort to manage your time properly. So people kind of come at that different ways. Does your calendar have something for pretty much every hour so that you've got your time blocked out, like you were saying, an hour for learning, maybe an hour to catch up on emails? I mean, what does your calendar look like? And how do you manage your time using your calendar to defend the things that you put on there so that you don't always end up chasing fires?
Sure, yeah. The fire chasing happens regardless if we want it to or not sometimes, but like you're saying, defending your calendar, um, is pretty important. I would say, usually from like 6 to 7, like exercise, wake up, and then 7 to 8, learning, and then 8 o'clock, get into calls and emails until about 11. And then usually 11 on, I schedule meetings, into the afternoon. So, and then after the meetings in the afternoon, which usually ended about 3, get back to emails, returning calls, getting ahead planning, that kind of thing. So that's kind of a broad structure of the day. It's pretty flexible at some points, where, if the CEO calls you and has a question, needs you to do something, then you just kind of adjust. But that happens. But Harry's really good about it and appreciates, you know, uh, the effort that we put in, in the Capex program and make sure that uh, everyone's following the guidelines and rules. And if it's a rush thing, did we plan, or was it just we sold the job and they asked us to start tomorrow and we're trying to put everything together? He's really good at helping us out with that and working through situations that might be time is of the essence versus we have a month to get this equipment and trucks versus a couple days. So that's in reality, as the job has evolved in the last, I'd say 6 months, it's definitely gotten more consistent in the fact that we've ironed out systems and we have protocols and everyone knows what to do now. Our biggest thing internally is we're changing truck numbers because we don't have a national truck number. So we're doing it across the board, which is no small task. And with 59 branches, some folks have done it one way forever and they don't want to change it. And I understand why, because you're comfortable with your system and it works. But we need to figure something out that's uniform and everyone can align with across the board. So we have some ideas and we're working through that, but uh, we're not perfect yet, but we're trying to get there for sure.
What's the truck number?
So on the trucks, so when we purchase a truck, the goal would be that we have a truck number to issue, like the fuel card, the cell phone that's going to go with the truck, and order the graphics and transport of that vehicle. So that way we can just track the expenses for that truck. And also, once it's at the branch, the mechanics can tag the truck number to any expenses that happen for maintenance and repair. And that way we can do a better job of tracking that. on our end as well. So there's some things we're working through and working on, and just a lot of spinning plates. But with a good team around you, you can keep up, and it's just been fast paced, but getting better each day.
So with your 58 branches, correct?
59 now, actually, as of yesterday. So
59 branches, congratulations. So
thank you.
that is a huge ship to turn when you're talking about implementing a new process. What is your tactic for starting that? How do you get 59 branches to do what you want to do, especially when it's a new process and people don't like change? How do you do it at scale like that?
I think, you hear it. One of the things that I've always tried to do is hear people out, because you want to hear why they want to keep their old system, why, and what we can do to marry together the new system and the old system. That way they can keep some portions of it that are important to them, and then we can accomplish our goal of having a national truck number across the board that we can reference on a sheet and know exactly what's going on at all times. And it's easier for us to make internal transfers between branches if we have all that information, versus locally asking the branch manager to pull a truck and give us all that information, and just trying to save them time in the end. But I think listening, and making sure that they're heard, and that the reasons that they're defending the system that they have. And in some cases, there's a few branches that have working systems at a local level, but we want to keep those in place to an extent, and then bring in the new system, like I was saying. But it's really that we're doing this for the folks that don't necessarily have a system in place, and they're looking to us for an answer. So as we get new acquisitions, they're like, what do we do, and how do we do this on a consistent level that's going to produce the same result each time we try it? And it's hard to do without something that's a uniform system. As y'all know, it's hard to make five it's up. I think we're 5,000 plus employees. We got to be in unison on this, but if we work through it and listen to each other, I think that's the main thing at the end of the day.
Listen to each of those 59 branches. That's a lot of conversations, man.
Tell me about it. Yeah, I like talking to people, but at the same time, sometimes at the end of the day, I'm just like, I don't need to talk to anyone else. I feel that. I feel that need.
But for your system that you guys are moving to, is it an off-the-shelf system or something that Yellowstone created specifically for your company?
Actually, Yellowstone. We got together, the Capex team, and our VP of accounting and our VP of finance, Timo and Chris, got us together in Orlando a couple weeks ago, and we worked through this in person, and thought about changes in systems that we could produce, more repeatable, consistent, good outcomes for everyone who's sending in a request in a timely manner. So we're working towards a lot of things, and one of them being graphics, getting it as far upstream. After my call with y'all today, I have 7 10-minute calls lined up back to back with every dealer that we are working with closely, and introducing them to the graphics vendor. And basically what's going to happen is they're going to be able to, as soon as the vehicle is paid for, the graphics folks will go out there, and then we'll get it on a transport, and then we'll show up to the branch with the truck number and just the little things that people, may or may not think is important, but it saves time and headache once it gets to the branch of having everything done prior.
I think that's the point of actually building a big company like Yellowstone, right? Like, so smaller functions at the branch level can be centralized, run more efficiently, because you can get a deal at scale, and that sort of improves the bottom line of all the entities that have come together, in this organization.
I agree. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And user experience is important, right? I mean, Ugars, you can talk about that from the website. Like, what people go through really helps to determine whether or not they adopt the process. So having a truck show up completely decaled and numbered is a much better experience than the branch having to run after that or try and do it themselves. So I think that's important. Anytime that you build a system, that you think about the experience of the user, which in this case is an internal user, but they're still just as important as external customers.
Definitely. I agree on that. It's always been about the end user experience. And that's, going back to the first question of like, why did they hire me? And I forgot till now. At the beginning, it was because I have an operations background, and I understood what it was to be out in the field day to day and why we needed equipment, versus just, saying, hey, like, you'll get it when you get it, and that's the way it is. Like, trying to bridge the gap and the relationships between, I guess, the FSO, which is our corporate function. We like to say field support office, Tim Portland says we don't like to use the C word, but that's just it's just the way it is. So FSO and the branches, that's what we're trying to do is make a tight knit relationship and make sure that they get what they need in a timely manner.
You mentioned a team twice, Capex team. What's the Capex team?
Yeah, so it's myself and an FA, Grant Hammond. He's based out of Columbus, Ohio, and right now that is the Capex team. So we he helps me with the back end of inputting things in our accounting software system for POs and generating POs, but we're working towards an internal system that will be launching, and I've said this since January. I'll be honest, IT, they're awesome. They're awesome, but consistently in every conversation I've had recently, they have the ability to push stuff off, as far as deadlines that they commit to, like no one else, and get away with it, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for them. But at the end of the day, it's just, since January, we've been wanting to launch this Capex system, so we'll have a submittal and tracking system, so an economic resource planning system for our guys to go in and see their submittals and see what the status is and who it's with and if it's been approved by Tim and Harry. And basically, the workflow that's been on paper and done on Excel spreadsheets and emails will now be in a system that is easy to reference, track, input, and it's becoming a reality. They're working on it feverishly right now. Gabe, our director of IT, he had it kind of on someone's plate out of Chicago, and he's been super busy with a lot of other projects that Gabe's been giving him. But now he pulled everything else and made this his one sole focus. So very much looking forward to seeing it launch, and we'll definitely love to follow up with you guys on it once we do. But I'm excited because, as you can imagine, working with Excel spreadsheets and emails can sometimes get messy, and human error is a very real thing. So myself and Grant, we miss one or two things out of 100, and those one or two things turn out to be fires. So that's just happens.
Very cool. So this is the trucking, like tracking the trucks, being able to streamline sourcing for the branches, initiative that you have taken up. Like, are you seeing it extend beyond trucking to other equipments?
Tracking other equipment as well?
Yeah, like just sourcing part of it, or like other items that you would like to track, such as expenses, or I know what they're doing in the field. I'm sure that you're doing that stuff too.
Sure, yeah. So like tractors, riding mowers, we track those. We have actual like a little hockey puck that we put on them. That's hidden in somewhere. So good luck finding it. But that's how we keep track of our equipment, and it's good for us. And we've been working with the Urban Eye guys. Remember from the tech conference last year on some pilots. And it's really cool to see the breadcrumb trail that is there at the end of the day. It's very handy. They're making some adjustments. Ben and I are working with them. Really, Ben has led the conversation because the last meeting we had was the day after my son was born. So I was MIA. I was not present. But that's kind of the update. We're working with them, and it's really cool to see the results of the technology. And as it evolves, I'm sure it's only going to get better.
That's something that I believe in a lot because we have vehicle tracking, whether it's truck GPS or, like you said, you can put the little hidden hockey pucks on machines, but that's only really half of the piece of the puzzle. And knowing what humans are doing in relation to what those machines are doing is really, really important. Do you guys do job mapping, motion mapping, progress planning, anything like that, so that you can take a plan and then compare it to the actual data and understand how well your teams are performing to the way that you expected or told them to perform? Have you gotten to that level yet?
Yeah, so our BDMs, our business development managers, and our branch managers, they really spend a lot of time planning on the front end and working through what the hours are going to be. And we have 30, 60, 90-day follow-ups after each job started. So just making sure that, for one, we're keeping it within the hours, two, clients happy, and three, just making sure everyone is on the same page from an operational and sales standpoint. I think it really depends on the extent of knowing, like you're saying, bridging the gap between the operations sales side and the actual usage, because no one in the industry has actually figured out like handheld usage that can be converted to figure out how long do you need a battery to run and these crews. So Ben and I are actually working on that currently. And also have a cool opportunity with Still. They have a little puck that you can put. It's really tiny, but I'm sure you know about it, Michael. But you can put it on your equipment for those who don't, and it basically will track your rev limiting and like how much you're actually using gas powered equipment, and then upload it by Bluetooth at the end of the day, so you can actually figure out what's going on. And you can have a beacon that is at the yard, and as you drive in, it can account for any missing items at the end of the day, which is pretty cool. So we're piloting that with them right now, and trying to figure out the use case on a large scale. But it's definitely something we're trying to figure out the metrics and bridge the gap. And I don't think anyone has figured it out. And if they have, I really want to talk to them. But I mean, we talked to Sperber, Brightview, Landcare. They're all trying to figure it out too. So we're not, just we're trying to share information amongst and just have open discussion across the industry on my end at least. And everyone's had great feedback for us and given that, and we try to give the same from our experiences. So it'll be cool to see in a couple years all the efforts everyone's putting in, the result of it.
Indeed.
One other interesting data point that comes out of having those pucks is understanding which equipment is actually being utilized more. Because one of the things that we all know in the industry is everyone has their favorite weed eater or their favorite mower. And a lot of companies have moved, especially with 2-cycle stuff, to, well, let's just replace it every 2 years, 3 years, because at that point, the cost of repairing it is going the opposite direction versus just buying new. So does having that monitoring help you to make sure that all of your equipment is being equally utilized and be able to say, hey guys, instead of grabbing weed eater number 10 this week, which you've used for the last month, how about use weed eater 11 because that has 0 hours on it this year? So is it helping to surface some of that information? Because I think in the past, if you have the mindset of, well, I'm just going to turn 2-cycle over every 2 years, you may be turning stuff over that isn't actually getting used.
That's a good point. We haven't gotten, to be honest, like we're at the forefront of it and we're still trying to collect the data, but that's a good point, and something we did think about to an extent on mowers, but handheld equipment, that would be pretty exciting to see. Hey, let's even out the hours. Let's make sure that we're utilizing equipment to the fullest and not just leaving stuff unutilized, and thus why did we buy it in the first place? So that's a good point. Definitely will add it. Thank you. Got something out of this meeting for me, so I appreciate it.
Hey, we are still working. Exactly. While you were talking about like putting sensors on equipment, I mean, how far can you take it? Like, what's the smallest piece of equipment you can put a sensor on? Like, if you had a blank check, how far will you go?
To my understanding, chainsaws, it works. You can run it on weed eaters, blowers, hedge trimmers. You can do it on anything that I'm aware of. I haven't gotten to the most minute piece of equipment yet. I would think that could be a smaller chainsaw, but I don't know. Michael, have you seen examples of this? I don't act like I'm the expert because we just started this literally 2 weeks ago.
I've seen it on, like you said, pretty much any piece of equipment at this point. Now, you may get different data points depending on what type of equipment it is and how well it can actually connect with the onboard systems. But to kind of go back to the urban AI piece, those sensors are on humans, but it has AI built in it to understand what piece of equipment is being used. So it can guess whether or not you're using a blower or a string trimmer based on speed and path of motion throughout the property. So that's a really interesting idea because it's expensive to put these devices on every piece of equipment that you have. And so what urban AI kind of brings forward is the ability to just put these devices on your people, which there's far fewer people than there are pieces of equipment. And then it can understand what equipment is being used based on path of motion throughout the property. So that's an interesting way. Now you lose the data of what's happening with that piece of equipment. So you can't understand RPMs or when the power is actually being used or how much battery is being used if it is battery equipment. So it's a trade-off. And I think that's where the industry is right now. There's a lot of trade-offs. If you want all the data, then willing to sacrifice some of the data, then you can do it by potentially putting the devices on people rather than on machines.
I agree on that.
And so as the fleet becomes more digital, like clearly you're starting from trucks, right? Like even in Evergreen, Michael, like you guys started from trucks. Like you want cameras in trucks, you want to see the speed, like where it's been. And so that's the biggest piece of equipment you have. And then of course you can also tag people, you can make them digital, and you can put these puck-like sensors you were talking about from like into mowers or string trimmers or even chainsaws. When you think about in your mind like this staggered phasing of digitizing the fleet, right? So you're starting with trucks. What comes next?
It's a good point. I want to say that I know the path, just because what we're looking at today could be obsolete. There could be something
Yeah.
that comes in the next 6 months that just changes the game for everything. But I think currently, what we're doing, having inventory counts of handheld equipment on a digital scale and using the Bluetooth opportunities that we're running into to track that equipment, register it, tag it as an asset number that we have in our accounting system, and keep track of when it's actually phased out of our fleet or equipment holdings. So I think that's just really kind of the game changers is the tracking side of things when it comes to actually being able to quantify numbers and have an answer for what is this costing us? How long is the life? What are we getting out of useful life of anything? That's really been the biggest question that has been posed, and in the last 6 months I've been working towards, but I don't have a comprehensive Yellowstone-wide answer, but we have some local markets that have been doing these trials that have showed promise of something we can do at a national scale for sure.
I think one of the things, and we kind of glossed over it when you mentioned it, but the ability for a scanner to pick up what pieces of equipment have returned to the yard is huge. When you think about companies, even smaller companies, the amount of time spent each month, hopefully it's being done each month, to do inventory is crazy. And the cost of inventory to either stop production or have crew leaders do it or operation managers do it is very, very expensive. And that's one of the things that we talk about a lot on this channel is people look at technology and say, oh, that's too expensive for me to implement. But
Right.
you have to think of the flip side. How much money are you saving? How much time are you saving by implementing these things? And to understand your inventory on a daily basis has a ton of power to it and
Mhm.
reduces the amount of time and other expenditures that you need to do to go track down those items. So I think that's an exciting thing and something I would love to see in action. I've seen it in practice and in theory, but to have a truck drive through a tunnel, for lack of better words, that then recognizes what equipment is on there based on RFID tags or Bluetooth as it goes through. So very important, I think, for us to continue to talk about the dichotomy between what you save and how much a new technology costs.
It's hard. It's hard to quantify, but it's the reality of if you're actually doing these things like you're saying and implementing it and seeing the results versus talking about it. I feel like we're really good at talking about it as an industry, but actually making the next step and making it happen is key and keeping it forward with that. Y'all remember at the tech conference the guy who had the AI glasses? He was talking about AI glasses. And yeah, I've
Oh
seen
yeah.
some of those being released, and I'm just really interested to see what that is going to be like for crew leaders at like higher level properties, being able to be communicating with the account manager from their office, but the property manager sending in pictures, and you can use the geolocation from the picture to take them right to it, and you have it on the glass. It's just wild what it could be. I haven't utilized it, but the concept is exciting, right? Like it's pretty cool where we can go as an industry in some aspects that we might be behind the curve, and we might be always behind the curve of technology when it comes to other industries. But once we implement it, its operational benefit is just pretty high compared to some other industries of just like utilizing it and they break even. Like our cost could really you know be noticeable in the fact of saving on fuel, saving on time. Other projects can be done. The account manager doesn't have to drive out there. He can work on proposals, make money for the company on extra enhancements, stuff like that. It's all about time and how to utilize it. But it's exciting to see. But that's why I like the tech conference. I don't know about you guys. It's really, really cool and excited. This year it's in Vegas, so we'll have to have some fun.
Oh, I understand. Um, because we are talking about time, I wanna bring the conversation to robotics because nothing saves time like a freaking robot, does it?
That's right. That's
And
right.
you have worked at it for a while now. Like I remember it's been what, this is your third year doing robot
Yes.
trials?
Mhm.
Can you talk through like how you have made progress from year one, what you were doing to year two, and where you are at, with year three?
For sure. So year 1 was definitely like, "Oh, that's cool." Everyone's watching it, the crew leader isn't going and weed eating, he's watching the robot as it's going around because we were terrified it's gonna, run into something
Sorry,
or
sorry to interrupt. This was 2021.
Yes.
Year one was 20. Okay, go on. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was actually, June of 2020, actually, we got our first Greensey
Mhm.
unit. Didn't get utilized in the field until August of 2020, but, 2021 is when we started exploring, other manufacturers and started actually making some progress in it, but, uh, yeah, I mean, year 2, basically was, "Hey, we need to make sure that crew leader is on a weed eater," and Cookie was my, guy operating on some larger sites, um, and he looked like just a bandito. He had like straps across him with both remotes under each arm with the stop button, kill switch, and he'd be out there weed eating and really saving some time. And it was pretty exciting to see. We got up to like Ben said 38 hours. I really just remember getting around 30 consistently for about 6 weeks. In I believe it was 2022. Basically March to May, we had some really cool progress when it was raining and it was growing fast and some longer run times that we were running into. But yeah, definitely exciting to see. And then year 3, we're trying to make sure that we have a plan. So at our leadership conference in January, Ben gave a presentation on, you know, how are we planning? Like what sites are we going to go to? Obviously being able to use site recon to say like, hey, this is what's autonomous. That's pretty sweet. And thank you, UCARS, for, making it easy on the industry in that case. 3, just making sure that what we plan is actually being executed. So we have weekly meetings with Michael now, which we're super excited about that someone with his experiences, in the industry with Scythe. So that's pretty exciting. And Greensey, we also have weekly meetings. So I'd say Scythe and Greensey, we're trying to figure out and utilize the data that they have collected on a weekly basis, make sure it matches up with our hours and try to quantify the time savings. Because like you're saying, robots are really cool and can save time. I want to see the result of that in its fullest, but it's just going to take everyone getting on board at the operational level.
So one big thing that you mentioned that I think is important for robotics is you mentioned that your crew leader is doing something different, right? And I think
Really.
that's important, right? Really different. And I think that's important because I think the only way that robotics works in a company is if you're willing to look at your process and change your entire process, because robotics does change the flow of operations, and you have to be willing to reconfigure your teams to, maybe this used to be a 6-person crew and now 2 people can do it, but you still might need to send 2 people at the very end of the day just to do the cleanup so that the 2-person mowing crew can keep mowing and doing the string trimming, and then send 2 people at the end of the day. So have you guys done a whole lot of that? Is your organization prepared to make those changes? It sounds like yes, because it sounds like you're being successful with the robots. But I think this is a really, really important point for any company that's watching this and is thinking about hopping into robotics. You can't keep doing it the same way that you were doing it before.
Right. Right. Agreed. I would say that's definitely the biggest pain point of, like I said, getting operations on board as far as, planning and then having the weekly meetings all the way from step 1 to 3, and then making sure that we're utilizing it to the plan and quantifying the results. So that way we can see, hey, this is going to be successful. Why? Here's the time savings. Here's the percentage saved. The really cool thing we're working with our director of IT on is creating a dashboard for robotics, so we can actually quantify side by side on a per acre time savings, different brands. So it's going to be cool. Definitely something that Gabe is capable of. Just amazing dashboards he's put together on the financial side for us and tracking and all sorts of internal things that we need. But this one for me will be kind of the best one he's done yet. Because honestly, I'm more excited about robots than anything. I love fleet and equipment to the extent of helping people, but I mean, come on, you got something running around with a 5-foot deck that's cutting grass, at like 4 or 5 miles an hour. So I mean, like, how could you not get excited seeing something that's just like an RC car for adults out there just going to town? Obviously, safety is the biggest thing. Number one, if it's not safe, we're not going to utilize it. But we've really had a lot of success and training and outlining what we need to do with our crews and looking forward to seeing the future as we roll it out further than the 3 branches that we have utilized thus far in our robotics trials. I think it would be pretty cool to have the message that's replicable and then go from there.
So right now you said 3 branches. In those 3 branches, you have one crew designated to do the robotic mowing. And as the robot does mowing, these guys are trained to do other things like weed eating or blowing. And so this is like a 2-person crew with a robot. Is that, or it's a
I think it's 3 is what we're shooting for,
okay?
cutting it down from 4 to 3, just
Okay.
to see, what is the quantity of time saved with 1 person. Cutting it down to 2 right away, I guess the crawl, walk, run is always a good analogy, right? So we're trying to make sure that we don't overburden the crew and they haven't become the best of this technology to utilize it to its fullest, and then they get, discouraged and don't wanna use it. We wanna make sure that they have, like, a good experience on their end, understand it, be like, "Man, this is awesome, saving me time, and I don't really need this other 3rd person, so let's go down to 2." When we get there, that's really gonna be cool to see.
Did you cherry pick the crew based on how open they would be to like, learning new things and like working with, did you find the right people?
I personally did not, the operations guys did, but they know their
Okay.
guys to understand, like, "Hey, is this person gonna get discouraged, or are they good, with technology? Is this their forte?" Definitely pick the best person at each branch to utilize it and make sure that the route that we gave them would be successful with it as well. That's the main thing on the planning side of the front.
The route, because you want to have sites where the robots can actually get that many hours of mowing.
Correct, yes, yeah, very important. Because I mean, if at the end of the day, if we're, getting like 5 hours a week, everyone's gonna get discouraged and, you know
Right.
but,
Um,
when you get to above, I think usually about 20 plus, everyone starts to get excited.
I see. So I see this dichotomy between the sites that you already have. Some of them can run robots, right? And then your some of them can't. And then the robot products are going to get better over the years to be able to
Mhm,
service the other sites. That tells me that maybe the new sites that you pick up in the market, maybe it makes sense to look for sites that robots can operate on, especially for those branches, because well, you have robots, but your competitors don't. I'm assuming on those routes or in those service areas, and that just gives you undue advantage. Like freaking saving for 30 hours and going on. I think you can do something with pricing there and capturing jobs. I don't know, like if that thought circulated or what.
mhm.
You guys
I
can
think
think about
another
it.
piece I think another piece to that is not just is certainly like looking for new work to pick up that is robotic friendly,
Yeah.
but it's also a good conversation to have with clients that
Mm,
when enhancements are done, or hey, this property would be really great for robotics if we got rid of this bed and made it turf, or we did this readjustment. So I think it's a combination of looking for work that is robotic friendly, but we can't be too picky and choosy about which jobs we take. So that's where the secondary conversation kind of comes in of, hey, this would be great if we did these 3 things to your property. We could really utilize robotics.
Agreed. Yeah, that's the main thing is working with the client, like you're saying, and figuring out what I don't wanna say deterrents there are, but, just working through items that can be changed and make it more useful if they're excited about the robots as well, which is most cases. I mean, the clients really love seeing it, surprisingly. You'd be like, I'm paying for a robot? No, they're just like, "Oh my gosh, there's a robot out here? This is so cool." And they're posting it on their social media and they're pretty excited if they can say in the instance of Scythe, having an electric autonomous mower, they're like, "Sustainability." We have our social media post for this week. So they get pretty excited about that kind of thing.
sweet.
So
Go on, Mike.
go ahead, of course.
I mean, okay, so I was just asking, what does the next year look like? This is year 3. What's going to happen in year 4? Michael, what was your question? We'll throw both of them at Sean.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, actually, it does. They kind of go well together because hopefully year 4 is scaling up. And my question is, what do you have to do to your infrastructure to be ready to do more robotic mowing? Because it's, again, not necessarily the same setup. You mentioned that scythe mowers are electric and require charging. It may require setting crews up differently,
Mhm.
so potentially different trucks or trailers. So what does year 4 look like, and what infrastructure changes are you going to need to make in order to be prepared for that?
Definitely. Great question on the infrastructure because we're still trying to figure that out. And we're hoping that a OEM or someone of that nature will have kind of a out of the box and scalable solution that will be able to utilize across Yellowstone. I'd say that, as we start these pilot programs into the 4th year, or we're purchasing this equipment and we're utilizing it, we're definitely going to make the changes at the branches we have met, regardless, because we want to be prepared. But I think it's going to be a piecemeal type rollout of the infrastructure side and just utilizing it and figuring out, hey, well, we don't always own all of our properties that we are located at. So working with the landlord and saying, hey, what would you be willing to do? Because we're wanting to utilize this. Would you be able to make these changes, allow these changes? And that's pretty exciting. But going into the 4th year, it's definitely scaling. That is Ben's vision, and definitely wants to make sure that this year is the year of data collection and proving, and then next year really rolling it out and in a deeper level, and having the focus to make sure that we're not missing any data that we could quantify and track. And it's so far so good this year. I would say we're May 2nd now. It's really launched back in March, as far as our Texas mowing, and then Columbus is about to start mowing again, or I think they have, getting up there. So the 3 branches that have utilized the autonomous program, I think it's really cool to see where they started from and where they're going. And I know that other branches at Yellowstone are looking to these pilot programs and saying, like, how did you do it? Like, why are we doing this? It's a little intimidating. I mean, let's be honest, scaling something and making sure it works on unproven area of our business that we're looking into. So just, not overlooking that and just making sure that they feel like their, questions are answered and they understand and feel comfortable, because like Ben and I can, say like, oh yeah, this would be a good spot. Let's go. But unless, like I say, you listen and understand what their concerns are and make sure their, questions are answered, they're not going to want to be full bore on making sure this works, because they won't be comfortable. So we want to make sure that everyone's on the same page, comfortable, and able to roll this out in a way that works for all.
Adding with that, we can go to the secret question.
Oh shoot!
All
I'm
right.
scared. What kind of secret question?
I remember mine. The one I asked, Nick, do you remember yours, Mike? I actually
I
remember
don't
yours
know.
too.
Okay, well, you ask yours, and then I'll see if it's the one I was thinking of, because I can only remember one, and I don't remember which one of us it was. So,
All right, Sean, here we go.
Okay.
If you had a wish and you could get a superpower, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I think it'd be really cool to have like time travel. Figuring that out.
Oh,
I don't know
yeah.
if it's a superpower, but I think
Yeah,
like
Doctor
altering time
Strange.
would be the coolest thing ever. You could pause it, you could, slow down, and you could get a ton of stuff done, and then press start, and then everyone's like, "How did you do all that so fast?" That would be so cool, I would think.
Sean is still working at Yellowstone if he can time travel, clearly.
yeah,
Clearly. So
all right, I do remember mine, because it was, I do remember that you asked that. That's a great secret question, by the way. So my secret question, our channel is beer chai. So
yeah.
do you have a favorite beer? And if you're not a beer person, do you have a favorite drink?
For sure. I would say that, locally, there's some breweries that I prefer. I love hazy IPAs. So
Nice.
McConaughey's is one. So I'd recommend anybody who can ship McConaughey's to them to try it. Great hazy IPA. And then Electric Jellyfish. It's a local. Both are local to Central Texas. So really like them. They're definitely town favorites in Austin, at least. I know that they're pretty much in every restaurant you go to now on tap. So it's pretty cool.
I should have asked you this question last week when I was
When you
down
were-
there, because
true.
I missed out on both of those. I had a different local one, but it was not either one of those two. So next time I'm in the area, because I also like hazies, so I will definitely have to check those out.
For sure, for sure. Well, I need to buy you a beer. So that's the thing. If you're coming to town, you too, Garsh, you need to come to town.
Yes, sir.
Last year, tech conference, we had his first margarita. I remember that. Let's talk about that.
Were you there when I ordered the float? and I
Oh,
ordered it
yes.
for the whole table, and it was a float.
Yeah, well,
float
yourself in front of the whole table. Let's clarify, because everyone was done eating and no one wanted dessert, and you were all like, "I want a whole root beer float." And, you're just like, "Okay, cool. Can we still get the check or no?" And we had to wait and watch you eat it before we got the check. It was pretty funny.
Done that with a lot of people.
I loved it. I loved it. It made
Um,
me laugh. Anyway,
Thank you so much, Sean. This was really cool. I appreciate you sharing learnings and being open with us. Definitely want to do this again.
for sure, for sure. Thank you guys.